Title: The Alpha's Fall. I never expected the worst day of my life to begin with something as mundane as forgetting my phone at home. If I hadn't doubled back to grab it, maybe I never would have heard them. Maybe ignorance really would have been bliss. But fate, or whatever twisted force plays with our lives, had other plans. It was a Tuesday morning. I was already halfway to work when I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. So grumbling to myself, I turned the car around and drove back home. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. I didn't think anything of it. My wife, Sarah, often worked from home, and I assumed she was on a call. But then I heard the laughter. A deep, smug laugh that didn't belong in my house. Came from upstairs. From our bedroom. My blood ran cold. I'm not a hothead. I've always prided myself on being calm, rational, the nice guy. But in that moment, all the niceties in the world burned away, leaving behind a silent, focused rage. I crept upstairs like a ghost, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they'd hear it. But the sounds coming from behind the door covered everything else. Voices. Sarah's laugh mingling with his. "You're lucky, you know," the man said. "Most women don't get to be with an alpha like me." I froze. An alpha? Sarah giggled as if he were some kind of goddamn comedian. "You're terrible." "Terrible? Nah, I'm the best. Her husband doesn't stand a chance. Does he?" That was it. That was the moment something inside me shattered like glass. I pushed the door open. They were sprawled across my bed. Sarah half-dressed, her lover, a man I'd never seen before, lounging like he owned the place. He wasn't anything special. Mid-30s, scruffy beard, expensive-looking watch. The kind of guy who probably overcompensated for a lack of substance. Sarah gasped when she saw me. She leapt up, fumbling to cover herself. "Michael, you don't need to explain," I said. My voice was so calm it startled even me. I turned my gaze to her lover. He smirked at me, completely unbothered. "So this is the husband, huh?" He said it with disdain, like I was some insect he'd flick off his shoulder. Then, with a grin, he added, "You're a lucky man. You know that? I'm showing your wife what it's like to be with a real man." That, when he called himself the alpha. "An alpha," I repeated quietly. The rage that had been simmering now boiled. But still, I kept my composure. "Control," I told myself. "You're better than him." He grinned wider. "That's right. Don't take it too hard. Not everyone's cut out to be at the top of the food chain." Sarah looked between us, her face pale. "Michael, please. Don't do anything stupid." I ignored her. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You think you're an alpha? Let's find out." He frowned, but there was still arrogance in his eyes. He sat up straighter, flexing as if to intimidate me. I didn't flinch. "Get dressed," I said. "Both of you." Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off with a look. She'd forfeited the right to explanations or excuses. Her lover shrugged, unfazed. "Fine. Whatever. This should be good." I turned and walked downstairs, my hands shaking as I gripped the banister. It wasn't fear. It wasn't weakness. It was the adrenaline fueling the first steps of my plan. By the time they came down, I was waiting in the living room. Sarah stood behind her lover, biting her lip and glancing at me with those wide, apologetic eyes. He, meanwhile, stood there like he owned the place, hands stuffed in his pockets, a smug grin plastered across his face. "All right, man," he said. "Let's get this over with. What do you want to do? Shout? Cry? Punch me? I'm not worried about a guy like you." I smiled. "None of that," I said. "We're going to play a game." He raised an eyebrow. "A game?" "That's right," I replied. "You call yourself the alpha, right? You're the best? So let's see if you're really at the top of the food chain." Now he looked suspicious. "What kind of game?" "A simple challenge," I said. "We'll have 3 rounds. Winner takes all." He glanced at Sarah, then back at me. "You're serious?" "As serious as you calling yourself an alpha." He laughed. "All right, fine. Let's do this. What are the rounds?" Then back at me. "You're serious?" "As serious as you calling yourself an alpha." He laughed. All right, fine. Let's do this. What are the rounds? Round 1, strength. I led him to the garage. I keep a home gym there, nothing fancy, just some free weights and a bench press. You want to be the alpha? I said. Let's see what you can lift. He puffed up like a peacock. Too easy. We started with the bench press. He loaded up the bar and cranked out a set of 200 pounds, grunting obnoxiously the whole time. When he finished, he stood up and wiped his hands. Beat that, he said. I smiled faintly. I hadn't touched the weights in weeks. But adrenaline is a funny thing. It sharpens you, fuels you. I lay down, focused, and matched his 200 pounds. Then I added 10 more and did it again. His grin faltered. Lucky shot, he muttered. You said you're the alpha. I reminded him. But let's keep going. Round 2, skill. The second round was chess. I knew his type, all brawn and bravado but no finesse. I pulled out the board and set it up. Chess. He scoffed. What's this got to do with anything? An alpha is supposed to be smart, right? Let's see how well you strategize. He rolled his eyes but sat down. 10 minutes in, I knew I had him. He played sloppily, aggressively, trying to win through sheer force. A predictable trait of someone who thinks dominance is the same as control. I dismantled him piece by piece. Checkmate, I said quietly. His face turned red. Sarah watched silently, her arms crossed, her gaze shifting nervously between us. Round 3, control. I saved the best for last. Final round, I said, standing tall. This one's about control. A real alpha knows how to control himself in any situation. What's that supposed to mean? He snapped, clearly rattled. I walked to the table and picked up a small notebook, Sarah's planner. I'd seen it sitting on the kitchen counter earlier. You know what's funny? I said. People like you think you're untouchable. But the truth is, you don't actually control anything. What are you talking about? He demanded. Your job, for example. I opened the planner and held up a piece of paper I'd found tucked inside. His face went white. How do you know about that? He stammered. I didn't answer. Instead, I spoke calmly, deliberately. You thought you could come into my house. You thought you could take what's mine without consequences. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice. But you underestimated me. Michael, Sarah whispered, suddenly afraid. Her lover turned to her. What the hell did you tell him? Nothing, she said quickly. I smiled. Don't blame her. She didn't need to tell me anything. You're sloppy, just like your chess game. I know all about the shady deals at your company. The ones you thought no one would find out about. He staggered back a step. You're bluffing. Try me, I said. Or better yet, tell your boss what I know. See what he thinks. Now he was the one shaking. All the bravado, all the smug confidence, gone. What do you want? He choked out. I don't want anything from you, I replied. I just want you to leave. He swallowed hard, his face pale. He looked at Sarah, but she offered him no support. Get out of my house, I said quietly. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't call himself an alpha. He just grabbed his things and stumbled out the door, leaving behind whatever shred of pride he'd brought with him. When he was gone, Sarah tried to speak. Michael, I held up a hand. Save it. I'll have the divorce papers drawn up. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't feel a thing. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't weak. I'd faced the man who thought he could take everything from me, and watched him crumble. He thought he was the alpha, but in the end, he was nothing. And I, the quiet, unassuming husband, was the one left standing. So guys, if you all liked today's story, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon. Thank you for watching.